Okay, welcome back. So in this section, we will have a closer look at the lambda function which we created in the last tutorial. So let's go line by line. So what is the first statement? The first statement is use strict statement or directive. So the use strict tells that it has to be executed in a strict mode. So there is strict mode and non-strict mode. So in strict mode, some of the functions are not really allowed, or some of the features or the way you write the program is not really allowed in a strict mode, and in non-strict mode they are allowed. So for example, I will tell you just one example. So one example is that if you cannot really use a variable which is actually not declared in a strict mode, but in case of non-strict mode you can do that. So this was just one example. You can Google it out and find out more information about this strict mode. And the next line is actually, here we are actually importing this library, like Alexa SDK library we are importing into this app. Okay, so this is actually a kind of it's actually a Node.js statement. Okay, and in the third part we are defining the question dictionary. It's just an array, okay, with the question and answer. And in the fourth part, here we are declaring a variable which consists of the length of this dictionary. Okay, so then we define the variable for the handler. So inside this handler we are defining many handlers. So the first one is the launch request handler. In the launch request handler, let's have a look at the first statements. Okay, so in the first statement we are actually telling Alexa to listen and speak. So we are asking Alexa to speak this sentence as a welcome sentence, and then we are telling Alexa to wait for a user response. So listen is basically used to get the response. To wait for the response, I think it will wait for 8 seconds for the user response, and then the speak is used to speak that out. Okay, and this object, basically the response object is the object which actually contains all the functions which is passed on to Alexa. Okay, so I think the first statement is pretty clear, and the second statement is actually emitting this response. So we build the response here, and once the response is ready we emit that to Alexa. So I think these two lines are quite pretty clear. And one more thing to note, the launch request. So the launch request indent or indent handler is executed when the skill is actually launched. Okay, so I think the first handler is quite pretty clear. So then let's have a look at the second one. Second one is ask question indent. So this is basically to handle our second indent, which is the ask question indent. So here the first line is this dot attribute of current question index. So we are defining a session variable over here. So what is session variable? I think you might be already aware about the session variable if you have worked on any web-based application. So it's the same concept here as well. So session variable is nothing but the variables which will be active for a current user session. So here why we are using session variable is because we want to know the current question index. So we want at any point of execution we need to know which question is being currently asked. Okay, so I think that's clear. And then let's go to the next line. So here it's again we are using the response object to build a response and asking to speak out the first question. So here is your first question, then plus we are appending the question here. So the question, ask question, is a function which will return the question back to this function. So ask question is defined over here below. We have defined here, so which will actually loop through that array and sends the current question based on the current question index. Okay, so let's come back here. So yeah, so we are appending the question and then we are asking Alexa to wait for a response. So we have built the response and then now we are emitting it to the Alexa. Okay, so I hope that is clear. Okay, And let's have a look at the next indent. This is the answer indent, which actually controls the answers given by the user. So it responds to the user whether the answer was correct or wrong, and does some operations over here. Okay, so let's see the first statement. So the user answer. So it's trying to get the user answer first. So how it is collecting the user answer? So see this statement. This dot event dot request dot indent dot slots dot answer dot value. So this part is quite familiar for us because we defined the slots in our user interface earlier. So let's have a quick look at our user interface. Okay, so here if you see the answer indent which we created, it has these sample utterances which has this static value with this answer parameter or the slot. Okay, so this slot. So what our code here trying to do is indent. So event.request is an object actually here, and inside that it's trying to access the indent. Indent is in this case nothing but answer indent dot slots. So basically the answer indent dot these slots, basically these slots, the answer slot, slots dot answer. So this answer slot basically, and then it's trying to pick up the value from there. So the values could be any of these actually. Okay, so dot values, so it picks up the values which is coming from the user. So it could be Canada or Antarctica or whatever. Okay, so the first statement, we are accepting the answer from the user. Okay, and in the next part we are updating our current question index. So we created a session variable earlier to set this to 0, and we are just taking it again from the session variable. So this session variable is updated here later on. So we need to always know the current index to get the correct answer. So the third line here we are getting the correct answer, and that is based on this index. So the array dot current index dot answer, we are getting it here, and then here we are checking whether the user answer is correct answer, then do this. If it is not, then do this, and we are preparing a response, and then say emitting the response back to the Alexa device. Okay, so then next is the stop indent. So this is the default indent which will get executed when it is stopped, and this is the cancel indent which get executed when it is cancelled. So these are the standard Amazon indents. Okay, and then here it is the ask question function which we had a quick look earlier. So this is basically just to loop through or just go through the questions and get the latest question back to the other program, other handler here. Okay, and then finally this is basically for registering the handlers. So here what we are doing is we are registering Alexa dot handlers, all the handlers basically. Okay, and this handler variable is the one which defines all the handlers. So what we are doing is we are using that variable to register all the handlers which was declared above or defined above, and then it's executing it. Okay, so that's all for this topic. So see you in the next section. Thank you so much.